What's up guys, it's Sohi here. I'm going to talk to you about how to set up your dieting numbers. This is one of the most common questions I get, so I figured I would create a YouTube video walking through step by step how to calculate your own numbers. First things first, we have to talk about calories. Calorie is a unit of energy. We need it to survive. To lose body fat, you need to be in a calorie deficit. This means that you are consuming less energy than you are expending. In other words, your calories in has to be less than calories out. Being in a negative energy balance like this is what will allow you to shed the body weight. I'm going to give you a very general body weight multiplier. It's a number range, so the vast majority of you should be dieting on 10 to 13 times your body weight in pounds. This should be your starting calorie intake. I hesitate to provide a range because everyone tries to put themselves on the lowest end of the range right off the bat. I made this mistake as well, so you'll have someone who's, let's say, a 155-pound woman saying, oh, well, 10 to 13, well, I want faster progress, so I'm going to go on the lower end of the range. 150 times 10 equals 1,500 calories, therefore, I should start my diet on 1,500 calories per day, right? Does that sound right? At the same time, you have someone who's like more petite, someone like my size, 110 pounds, let's just say, and they're like, oh, you want me to diet on 1,100 calories a day to start? And I'm like, okay, this is why I give you a range. I will say, if you only have a little bit of body fat to lose, if you are moderately active throughout the week, please start out on the high end of the range. Body weight times 13 is where you should start. So if you are 120 pounds, instead of starting at 1,200 calories, you should instead start at 1,560 because that's 120 times 13. So that would be your starting point. So that's your very, very general rule. Keep in mind that there are going to be some people who are above this range for their calorie intake. Maybe their activity level is very, very, very high. Maybe their metabolism is very, very, very high, in which case it is absolutely possible to diet on even higher calories than the 13 times body weight multiplier. Conversely, especially if your body fat puts you in the very obese category, you can actually drop to like 8 times body weight, maybe even lower, and be perfectly fine. So it's very much a case-by-case basis. Please keep in mind this is a very general recommendation to begin. The even better method for determining your total calorie intake for fat loss, however, is to figure out what your maintenance intake is, and then from there subtract anywhere from 300 to 500 a day. This is the second option for calculating your calories because most people do not know what their maintenance intake is. If you want to find out, I would recommend tracking everything you eat for a full week. Use a digital food scale. Try to mimic your real eating as closely as possible. This is tricky because usually when you start to log your food, a lot of people tend to alter the way that they eat because now they have to keep themselves accountable and write down what they're eating. So they tend to be, quote unquote, better with their diets. So try not to do that. Track for a week, see how your body weight changes throughout the week, and then make adjustments from there. Okay? So if you happen to know your maintenance intake, definitely go that route. Now that you've set your calories, you want to set your protein intake. Before, we used to say everyone should be consuming 1 gram of protein per 1 pound total body weight. So if you're 120 pounds, you should be consuming 120 grams of protein a day. We're now learning with more recent research coming out that most of us don't have to consume so much. So my general recommendation is somewhere between 0.73 grams to 1.0 grams per total pound of body weight should be your protein intake. Now, erring on the lower side does not mean that your body comp changes will be not as good. You have to keep in mind, what can you as an individual realistically stick to every day? There are going to be some of you who love dietary protein and are very, very highly active, in which case you should err on the higher side of the range. So you can go the full 1 gram protein per pound of body weight. Those of you whose current intake for protein is very, very low, let's say you're getting like 30, 40 grams in a day, making that kind of jump will be way too drastic, so you should err on the lower side of the range. Also, if you don't really like protein, then keep your protein as low as possible within the range that I recommend. The other option is to do 1 gram protein per 1 pound lean body mass. This is a good option for those of you who have body fat, let's say like 40% or higher. So in this case, you have more wiggle rooms in terms of how low you can bring your protein and not risk losing lean body mass, which we don't want to have happen. So protein is very muscle sparing. It's a really important part of allowing you to preserve as much muscle as you can while you are shedding the body fat. That way it's actual true fat loss happening and not just weight loss in which you're losing muscle and body fat, which the vast majority of us don't want to have happen, right? So again, 0.73 to 1.0 grams per pound of total body weight, or 1 gram protein per 1 pound lean body mass per day. Finally, we've got carbs and fats, which are the two remaining macronutrients. I am a huge proponent of eating in a way that you enjoy. So when I have a new client, I always ask them, do you have a preference for higher carbs? Do you have a preference for higher fats? Or do you have no preference? Do you like an even mix of both? I always create the program depending on what the client likes. So if you prefer higher carbs, you should err on giving yourself more carbs, obviously. If you prefer higher fats, you can definitely increase your fats and decrease your carb. Keep in mind, 1 gram of protein is 4 calories, 1 gram of carb is 4 calories, and 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So you can do basic arithmetic to calculate your total calorie intake. Fat is more calorically dense per gram than carbs and protein. It's just the way it is. So keep in mind that those fat grams that you consume can add up very quickly. Set your carb and fat to personal preference. General recommendation, start with your carbs at 1 gram per 1 pound total body weight, and then the remaining calories you have will be devoted to fats, okay? How you want to split that up is up to you. Generally, I don't recommend less than 0.3 gram of fat per 1 pound total body weight. So for simple math, if you're 150 pounds, try not to get less than 45 grams of fat per day. You need healthy fat in your diet. You don't want your hair to fall out. You want healthy hormone and nails, things like that. So in general, how you want to split up your carb and fat is up to you. I have a lot of clients for whom I actually don't even prescribe specific carb and fat numbers. So I'll be like, here is your calorie intake or your calorie range. Here's your protein target, and then your carb and fat numbers can be flexible however you want them to be, as long as you are hitting your calories and protein. So that's definitely an option you can go. But if you prefer to be more structured with your numbers, you can absolutely set some specific carb and fat numbers for yourself. All right, guys, to finish off, I'll give you 2 examples to help you understand this a little bit better. Let's start with a 5'4", 150-pound woman who is sedentary and 52 years old. Now, I gave you a few pieces of information, but it doesn't matter whether you're a male or a female, the approach ends up being the same. One thing I do want to tell you is that your total calorie intake will be influenced not only by your activity level, but your current body composition, your dieting history, your genetics, and a number of other factors, including your age. So the older you are, the lower your calorie allotment is, and vice versa. Let's say this woman is around 40% body fat. She's not very active, and she's a little bit on the older end. So between the 10 to 13 body weight multiplier, I would start her off at a little bit of the lower end that I normally would. So we have her at 11 is her body weight multiplier, let's just say. So we're going to do 150 times 11, which gives us 1650 calories. So that is your total calorie intake for fat loss. Next, we move on to protein. Because her body fat is on the higher end, I'm going to opt to use 1 gram protein per 1 pound lean body mass. Estimating 40% body fat, that means her lean body mass is 0.6. That's the remaining of her total body weight. So you have 150 times 0.6, which gives us 90 grams of protein. Moving on to carbs, she doesn't really have a preference for carbs or fat, so we're going to give her a moderate level of both. Let's just set her at the generic 1 gram carb per 1 pound total body weight, which is going to be 150 grams of carbs. From here, we devote the remaining calories to fats. Now remember that 1 gram of carb is 4 calories, 1 gram of protein is 4 calories, so we can do the math and figure out that we have 690 calories left. If you divide 690 by 9, you get 76.666, and then we can round that to 77 grams of fat remaining. Thus, her macros comes out to 90 grams protein, 150 gram carb, and 77 grams of fat for her fat loss macros. Okay, let's try one more example. You have a 26-year-old male who's 5'10", 220 pounds. He is very highly active, and he reports that his current maintenance intake is 4,000 calories a day. Now, this is a very high maintenance intake. In this situation, because he knows the number of calories it takes to maintain his current body weight, we're going to use that as our starting point, and we're going to subtract 500 calories. Now we have 3,500 calories as his dieting numbers. If you would have gone by the body weight multiplier, you would have come up with a number that is way too low for him. 3,500 calories relative to this person's body weight is 15.9. That's the body weight multiplier, which is actually considered very, very high as a fat loss body weight multiplier, but that's what's appropriate for him because his maintenance intake is so high. So that is okay. Next, we want to determine his protein. Because we know that he is very highly active, he lifts weights 5-6 days a week, he walks everywhere, and he does some cardio as well, we want to give him a high protein intake. So we're going to set him at 1 gram protein per 1 pound total body weight, which gives him 220 grams of protein. Now we have to set his carb intake. He loves carbs, feels better on a high carb diet. So we're going to give him, let's say, somewhere between 1.5 to 1.8 grams of carbs per 1 pound total body weight, which gives us a good range. We're going to round up, let's just say 400 grams of carbs for him. From here, we determine how many calories are remaining. So we subtract his total calorie allotment of 3,500 minus his protein calories minus his carb calories, and that's going to give us 1,020 calories left. That is what we have to devote to fats. If you divide by 9, you get 113.33 grams fats. You can round that to 115 grams of fat. Thus, this person's starting fat loss numbers come out to 220 protein, 400 carb, 115 fat. I hope this helps you understand dieting numbers a little bit better. You'll see that it is very, very individual, and the basic steps that I provided for you are very general. There's always going to be some tweaking to the individual needed, but if you want to learn how to do this on your own, this is a great starting point. Thanks for tuning in.